TCS, he never allowed it to be as a separate. It was owned by Tata Sons. It reported direct. It was a Tata Sons project. You have to support Indian enterprise, Indian efforts. They shun the Tatas every way. If you put a gun to my head, pull the trigger or remove the gun, I will not budge from my stance. How many people know that if it was not for the Tatas, Naren Karthikeyan would not have been in F1. Ratan Tata loved the American sort of car. So the Sierra was like the Chevy Blazer or the Ford Bronco.
Probably India wouldn't be where it is today without his single-minded drive, vision, what he created with Tata Motors, which in turn then filtered down to the rest of the industry. Early in the evening on October the 9th, 2024, Ratan Tata, Chairman Emeritus of the Tata Group, passed away. In this episode of the Evo India podcast, we are looking back at the life and times of India's and probably one of the world's greatest industrialists, philanthropists, a nation builder and visionary. And because this is Evo India, we are going to focus in particular on the automotive side of Mr. Tata's career. He was the father of the Indica, the Nano, which by extension also makes him the father of the indigenous automotive industry. Under his watch, Tata Motors bought Jaguar Land Rover in 2008. Safe to say that Tata Motors wouldn't be the automotive powerhouse that it is today without Mr. Tata's drive and vision. All that and more in today's podcast. I am Sirish Chandran, and in the studio, we have with us one of India's foremost automotive historians, Adil Darukhanawala. Adil, a sad day for India as a whole?
Yes, for sure, because the man transcended all age barriers. He never, came across as a industrialist to people in our sort of dispensation, because he was, basically speaking, a car guy who didn't want to be seen as a car guy, but his contribution to the automotive cause was beyond anything which the rest of the industry put together could have done,
So let's talk about the early career. When did Mr. Tata start off at the Tata Group?
He started off, I think, very early in the 70s. And as befitting anything within that group, you have to earn your stripes. And he had to start from basically ground zero. And he had to learn the ropes. He had to understand what made things tick. And interestingly, his first jobs or first placements within the Tata Group was with Tomco, which doesn't exist right now, Tata Oil Mills Company Limited.
Okay.
And
everybody thought it was Tata Steel, which was Tisco then?
No. It was Tomco. Then, after Tomco had shut down, he was put in charge of Nelco. That was Tata's electronics consumer goods arm. They used to make radios, transistors, etc. After that, as part of his so-called apprenticeship within the group, he also spent time on the shop floor at Tisco's big iron and steel works in Jamshedpur. The critical thing was where at Tomco and Nelco, he did put into place, or he did get engrossed in the business end of things. He would go and meet people. At Tisco, he was left alone, and he didn't know, but he went across gathering first-hand information himself, etc. And then GRD then took him under his wing and said, okay, let's get you going where the action really is. Tisco at that time was run by one towering, a giant leader, Rusi Modi, and he was probably one of India's finest man managers then, and he was a larger-than-life personality. So, and he was also one of GRD's favorites, but GRD thought that Ratan had earned his stripes at Nelco, Tomco, got some soul searching done at Tisco, and so he was put across into Telco, as Tata Motors was then known. At that time,
which was the largest firmament in the Tata Motors
Tisco.
empire? Tisco was the largest.
Tisco in the Tata Group, Tisco was the largest, without an iota of doubt. Understand one more thing, the Tata Group in the late 60s or mid 70s, in that period, they also inked an agreement with IBM. They were the forerunners of the computer movement in India. Infosys, etc., came much behind. But these guys inked an agreement with IBM, and Tata's brought computerization on a large scale to India. Ratan took a lot of interest in that, and which was to hold him in good stead going forward. I think what happened after liberalization in the mid-80s, that first wave, the Tatas were denied getting requisite collaborators for their car projects or whatever they wanted to do. So in that sort of sense, it was always officialdom, especially the dispensation. They knew that, and as we had already spoken earlier when we did the Tata Motors podcast, one of the first things which happened to Maruti was Suman Mulgaonkar being put into place to get the company going there. So these guys knew, so whenever, and they knew that if Tata Motors got a collaborator, rightly or wrongly, it would be a threat to Maruti Udyog at that time. So everything was done to prevent the Tatas from getting a collaborator. So it was inevitable. Suman Mulgaonkar, by that time Ratan Tata was also involved. They said, okay, let's forget. Let's think about doing our own thing in a small way. So the 407 pickup came in. It was first the 206, not 407. 206 pickup came in. It became the 207. From there, that ladder on body on frame sort of thing. They got the pickup thing out, got the estate body going. And
who was, before that, who really drove the whole car passion at Telco?
It was a group which Suman Mulgaonkar had spearheaded.
Was it because it was important for nation building, or was it because they were just car guys?
I think Suman Mulgaonkar was a great technocrat. He knew the automotive business inside out. The car guy side of thing came in from Ratan Tata. Then there were some other guys, like I mentioned to you earlier, from ERC, were KGK Rao, Shom, etc. So these guys were all passionate automotive souls, and these guys got together. So it was easy building a vehicle when a ladder frame is already there. You could do a myriad of bodies. Ratan Tata, when he joined the firm officially and got across in 91, I believe, that's when most of the work started, because the 207 was already out. Then the estate came in. I met Ratan Tata a month before the estate rolled out from Pune's Telco's plant in Pune. And he was very reticent, very shy. He did not because he abhorred meeting people, but because he didn't want to come across as he knew everything. Of course, he knew quite a lot, but that was the mark of the man. And the day the estate and the Sierra both rolled out together from the Pune plant, I was there. And for the first and I think only time in Telco's history, Tata Motors history, 3 chairmen who would be... J.R.D. Tata was the first chairman of Telco. Then he had given the reins to Suman Mulgaonkar. And then the next one to take over was Ratan Tata, would be another decade later. Those 3 were there at that. So it was a very epochal movement for the industry. So everyone talks about the Indica being that, but the seeds of this were planted there because no one gave Tata's any help in doing the estate and the Sierra. Those were the first true manifestations of an Indian car. Immediately after that, about 3 or 4 years later, we got the Sumo. And that did more than any other car they had built so far. The Sierra also did very well, but it was a case of learning the ropes. They were truck people, they were commercial vehicle people. They knew diesel, but they didn't know what made things tick. So it took some time.
And of course, the Sierra was more a lifestyleish personal mobility vehicle, whereas the Sumo was integral to India because Indians needed something for mobility, mass mobility, and the Sumo served it.
Understand one other thing. 2 things which I should bring into the picture right now. Ratan Tata loved the American sort of car. So the Sierra was like the Chevy Blazer or the Ford Bronco. It mirrored that sort of an approach. Plus, Suman Mulgaonkar's fastidious love for all things German. So the face was a German face and the form was an American thing. And they married that thing pretty well. It's just that when you had so much of glazed area there and all affixed, plus those cars were the first with air conditioning as standard, power windows, etc. And those things were alien to our component makers. Quality was not up to the mark. But if it worked well, those cars were great. If it didn't work well, then you had to really forge a great soul-searching relationship with your service managers therein. So that was one thing. And then the Sumo came in. The Sumo, they understood. I forget to understand why the product planners within Tata Motors right now can't do another Sumo. I don't mean Harrier. Harrier is different. It's just like Mahindra has got the Thar and the Scorpio, but they also have the Bolero. So the Sumo could have been the Bolero and more, and it had Mahindras on the ropes literally for when the thing came up. I think about 7-8 years, the Sumo was outstanding. And then they made that fatal blunder of trying to make it do things which it could not do very well with. And they cut corners, but that's another story. The key story here, as far as Sumo is concerned, is at the price point it came for 3,11,000 rupees. That's the price I paid for my Sumo then. The Maruti Zen was 3,30,000.
And 2 Zens could fit inside a Sumo.
Absolutely. Not just that. At that time, the preponderance of everything, diesel. And the Sumo worked brilliantly well in every aspect. Mighty frugal, lots of space, was very sturdily built, great ride quality, and it had got great brakes. So much so great that normal Mahindra Jeep drivers who would be there, they got into accidents because they would need to stamp on the brakes in a Mahindra to put to stop. Whereas this would stop on a dime and it got them into trouble. Same like we have got so many of the ADAS features right now trying to get India into trouble. So the Sumo went off where...
What was Ratan Tata's involvement in the Sumo? I believe the Sumo name came from Sumant Mulgaonkar.
Yes,
it was named after him.
Yes, could be. That was the easy part, and that I think everyone... See, Tatas within the whole fraternity, they respected people who worked with each other. And I think those levels of respect towards your colleagues and towards your workers and towards the fraternity at large was an inbuilt Tata tradition from at Bombay House, And Suman Mulgaonkar was JRD's, like JRD had this thing, he would pick up a person and let him do his job. And he had done a wonderful job. So, in fact, when the time came for Suman Mulgaonkar to hand over it was Suman Mulgaonkar who personally said that Ratan Tata should take over as a chairman of. So it spoke very highly of both of them, not just one of them, both of them. And that happened. And during that time, again, Tata Motors was rebuffed that Honda project didn't go through in the late 80s.
Where they were going to build the Accord.
So a lot of... But Tata Telco learned quite a lot from those 2 years they were there with Honda designing the things, and they learned a lot of things, and it was unfortunate that didn't happen. In that sort of sense, then Ratan Tata said, okay, it's time that we plow our own furrow, we must do our own car. He kept an eye out on what was low-hanging fruit which they could do, and he also said it's time that we had a car for India. So the low-hanging fruit fructified in doing a much, much better and upmarket vehicle, which happened to be the Safari. The Safari came in about a year before the Indica. They announced the Indica when the Safari was launched, and that such a simple objective for doing the Indica. It should have the space of an ambassador. It should be the length of a Maruti Zen, and it should come for the price of a Maruti 800. Very simple objective. And actually speaking, that's what happened. And the year and a half, first 18, 20 months were tough times for the Indica.
Yeah, Adil, we'll get to that. Everybody says that Ratan Tata had an eye for design. He studied as an architect, which probably also gave him some grounding in good design. Now, the Indica, when it came, it was a sea change in many ways, but also it was a very good-looking car.
Of course, yes.
Earlier, we just got hand-me-downs, but this was the first indigenous car, which was also a good-looking car. Was that design direction also driven by him, or was it like a larger team?
It was a larger team, but he definitely led that team. So, without saying too much about it, he definitely led the team, and he was not what you call shy of getting in expertise to fine-tune the design. And the idea studio which he picked up in Italy to get them to do that complete design and engineering for the body shell was something which he was always a part of. It's a different thing that the Italians per se are masters of the art of taking one design and reskinning it and selling it to 10 people. So it's the same design company which also did the Fiat Palio. So I remember when the Indica was launched at Auto Expo, and next to me was Mr. Sterza of Fiat, and when the wraps came out of the car, the look of disbelief on his face was unbelievable, and the idea guys were standing next to him as well, and they were beaming away. So it was great to have. And one more thing I must say, and which I had mentioned before also, Maruti was running away with all the sales records and whatnot. The day in the evening the Indica was announced, the pricing was to be announced, Maruti dropped its pants for the first time. It slashed the pricing of its cars. Sight unseen, a car had managed to do that. It speaks volumes for what Indian ingenuity can do. It's a different thing. It took a long time for the Indica to rustle up the numbers. But over its lifespan, as I see it through all its derivatives, Indica, Indigo, the
Indigo CS.
So all the versions, the Indigo Estate, it did over 1.5 million cars over its lifespan. And 1.5 million cars is not a failure by any sense of the imagination.
Yeah, and we should not forget also that the Nexon still has the genes, the roots of the Indica. It is that Indica platform that has been developed.
Absolutely. The question is, across over there, the Indica started off that as the first all monocoque car from any Indian manufacturer.
The first truly indigenous Indian car.
Yeah, no, even the Estate and Sierra and Suburban were also that. But
car, because those are body on frames, right?
Yeah, but so what happened there was a monocoque was beyond the purview of any. It requires another level of understanding as far as structural integrity goes, NVH goes, a lot of them. It had to, so they learnt everything on that. And I remember first 16, 18 months, the car was afflicted by a lot of tire problems. Wear was uneven, etc. The underfloor used to flex. They, ironed out, they understood, they did a fix, and the V2 came in.
Yes.
And the Indica V2 it cured all those things. Yeah. Sure, it still had problems with window winders and whatnot. The Indian component industry was still not able to, they thought, our Indian company sab chal jayega. So the Indian component industry was as much at fault as also the Tata Motors quality people in that sense. So,
but that initial year with the Indica, where it did not sell, where all these quality issues came about, that also put the entire company on the ropes. There is that story of Ford looking
No, Ford did not look at it.
Okay, what was the story?
Yeah, the story is not like that. The thing is that in the first 16, 18 months when this thing was happening, they still sold 70,000 cars in the first year. And what happened was, the taxi trade really proved the efficacy of the Indica. Taxi drivers, cabbies would log in 60, 70,000 kilometers in a year. They recovered the cost of the car in the very first year. That, unfortunately, like the Mercedes E-Class, quintessential taxi of the world in Europe. No one, looked at it in a different manner, but it's here in India. We looked at the Indica very differently.
Same in Southeast Asia, the Toyota Corolla.
Yeah, exactly. So it is just that we with our, we are wired a little differently. So we looked down upon that. But the taxi guys proved that this car was hardy, it could do. They were not worried about windows not working. So when they understood that, but what had happened was the cost overlays for the project had gone a little way out of control. So plus Tata Motors knew that getting true people who understood every nuance of a car, sheet metal, chassis, dynamics, suspension, etc. So it was a little tough going. At that time, they met Ford with the views. They had met because Ratan Tata being on so many international organizations, etc. So someone told him it's time that you met Ford. At Ford, they welcomed him, but they treated the guys very bad. Exactly like they said, you guys should not have got into that. Why the hell did you get? Why are you asking us to buy?
If you don't know how to make a car, why are you getting
so why you? I think that was typical American brash sort of approach. Ratan Tata heard this and he didn't say anything, came back more. I think we have to thank Ford for what they did. Because it really, that steely resolve, this is another trait of Ratan Tata. Okay, guys, let's go and show them, we'll prove them wrong. And that's what happened, and they invested, they got the people, they got a lot of things. One key thing which went wrong, which I've said it before also, Ratan Tata was a great car guy. He loved his cars. If you see whatever he had a Honda Civic, so many American cars, had a Ferrari California, Mercedes-Benz. So he loved cars per se, and he didn't shy. In fact, for a lot of times, he also used an esteem. So what I'm saying is, in that sort of sense, he was that car guy driving the company, but he was also on a parallel track. He had the Tata Group at that time, let me tell you, in the early 90s, there were over 110 companies in the group. And each company was doing its own thing. Then he set about those years trying to consolidate those things. And what was needed core to the group, you keep. What was not needed, you jettison. So he made 5-6 groups: technology, computers, software, steel, hospitality.
Was he responsible for TCS?
Yeah, he was responsible. He'd got TCS going from where it was. And again, another very important thing, good you mentioned this. TCS, he never allowed it to be as a separate. It was owned by Tata Sons. It reported direct. It was a Tata Sons project. So there were so many wheels within. But he got, so from 110 companies, he pruned them down to 30. Spread into 6 groups. So the amount of time he was giving Tata Motors was not productive for the group per se. But there was one flaw in that whole thing. While he was good, he gave the direction. He needed a managing director for Tata Motors. For 6-7 years, Tata Motors went without a managing director, and that was not on. But to his credit and to Tata Motors' credit, the momentum was so strong. And let's not forget one more thing. Tata Motors also had the bedrock of its commercial vehicle division. Very strong. And there also many people don't understand one thing which it did, which has proved so successful for the commercial vehicle side of things. He saw how the commercial vehicles were manufactured overseas. So a company, let's take a company ABC. It would design the cab, it would design its chassis, and the chassis would be punched by someone else and the rails would come there. He would buy axles from, say, Meritor. He would buy brakes from Rockwell. He said that Tata Motors shouldn't be doing all these things over and over and over again. Let's not... He set up the Tata Cummins joint venture to make these. That has been the savior of Tata Motors to this day. That thing which it took a decision to do that almost 15, 18 years ago, 20 years ago. And Tata Cummins, there was a lot of internal resistance to him from within, because these guys perceived, why is the boss going to Cummins? We can do. But Cummins already had proven engines, proven things, and it was a marriage made in heaven where both of them were on the same wavelength. So, overriding those things, he said, we must do that. And that has been the savior of... They've got a swathe of engines now from Cummins. No one seems to know this part of the equation at all.
In fact, no one seems to know that Ratan Tata was also involved in the commercial side of things, because we all focus on cars. Right? But Tata Motors is bigger in the commercial vehicle space.
Not just that. I don't know how many people know. In the 60s and 70s, especially when we were dependent only on Russia for our defense needs, what he did across over there was got his team to start making industrial stuff for army defense use. So those side of things, not many are aware of it. And he did that mighty, and they still do it to this day. Another thing on the commercial vehicle front, Tata Daewoo, let's not forget that. It still exists. It still is a force in South Africa, in Australia, New Zealand. A lot of things they've imbibed from that, and they have got it into their present day trucks as well.
The Prima trucks are the Tata Daewoo trucks.
So there is so much which has been done. And I think that you should never forget what the commercial vehicle side of things. So he kept that going. It was not low profile. It was low profile, not in the face for consumers, because no one buys a truck as a personal vehicle. It's a revenue generator. And they did rather well. Plus, also, the amount of technology he got from companies from Spain, from Brazil, etc., to make state-of-the-art coach bus bodies for ACGL in Goa, Marco Polo, etc. So, a lot of things under the radar, not anyone gives any credence, but those were all done over there, So, going without a managing director for a long time was not a good idea. He had put into place, there were trusted lieutenants, etc. But there was also tremendous internal strife. One division, department thinks, if I don't do this, that guy will get what you call seen in a bad light. So I should. It took time to get all those things going. But even I remember when the Indica came out, and at that time, one of my visits to ERC, I had seen many new projects come into the fore, And I remember we had done an interview with Ratan Tata for one issue of Car and Bike International. At that time, he spent 3 hours with me that day. And I asked him, how do you envision your the future for Tata Motors going forward? I think it was in the second half of the 1990s. So he said, and I said, who do you look to for? He said, I look to Toyota for inspiration, quite a lot. And he said that he spoke to me about, at that time, Toyota had its Previa MPVs. He said, that is the sort of vehicle I'd like to do. He had also said, I want to do a better auto rickshaw. He had said that. And he was thinking further ahead. And at that time, what is the point of doing a better auto rickshaw? It had got to do with something which he had seen on the roads which we are operating in. So he said, let's have something safer, much more stable. That sort of a thought process. So again, thinking of where it's not a glamorous thing, an auto rickshaw, so to speak. But he was thinking on those lines. And I'd seen some rushes. Then at one of the AGMs of the company, they showed a monocoque MPV, the 207 MPV. It was big. If you had seen the Mahindra Voyager from Mitsubishi, this came about 3 years before the Voyager was announced. So they were again ahead of the curve, but they did not pursue it. He after the Indica's thing, he thought that we should do a proper, high performance car. So the Magna was devised, the 3-box car, large car, size of a Ford Mondeo then, 2 liter or 2.2 liter, 4-cylinder, double overhead cam, 4 valves per cylinder engine, motoronic ignition, 5 or a 6-speed gearbox plus an automatic option. There were prototypes built, they ran, etc., everything. But again, it was too ambitious a project. So I think that was dropped logically, rather hesitatingly also. But I think that was the right, because by that time, the Indica needed all the help. The Indica started going, then this got a lot of success with the CS, Indica CS, the
sub 4 meter.
Yes, sub 4 meter. Again, they were the pioneers of that thing.
They were the ones who figured out
this correct
hack
for
the sub 4 meter rule.
So all those things, the estate was, Indica estate was very, very good.
But didn't sell because...
No, it sold very well. If you see, in that 1.5 million cars from this family, I think it did about 120,000 or something. So it was not so... It did well. It would never... Not many estates sold in India per se. I think it was the best-selling estate ever in Indian history, okay?
But like you said, we are wired.
Yeah. So that sort of thing happened. He tried to get, and they did get the Indica right. But by that same time, this thing about that auto rickshaw, it preyed, and I think that was one of the key things which was there in his mind. And he got his separate team to start thinking small, what could happen for the Indian realm for not just public utility. And from there, they devised a small quadricycle thing which came, if you were there at the launch of the Indica in Delhi, there was big placards were there about a small car. And that went on to become the Nano. So the plan was already on at the time, much before the Indica came out. So you cannot say that the Indica was just there. So he bided his... I remember one statement he had made to me. He says, Adil, I am notorious in my company for getting it into cars. So whether it's right or wrong, I don't know, but I love it, he told me. So that was the man. The Nano also was something which was wonderful. I must tell you one thing. At that time, I was with Zigwheels, Times of India. And the Times of India guys had done something not very good at that point in time. They had morphed his face on Mr. Bhargava's body, and who was leaning against a steam, and they put it on the Economic Times. So the Tata Group, they never said anything to them, but they just shunned them for a long time. Stopped talking to them. And I think it was not in good taste. I went and met Mr. Tata, not to seek any rapprochement because I was heading Zigwheels, but I said, I need your help. We know that our organization is not on the best of terms, but I need your help to, give me access to the Tata Motors archives at TMTC. He said, no problem. He did a letter there and there itself, gave it. He said, Adil, you are always welcome to do that. I still have that letter. So that was he never let something who had wronged him get in the way of keeping relationships going. Very, very strong, level-headed in his mind. We at Overdrive, a lot of our rivals at that time said, they are going to because we are a Tata company, we will praise the Indica to the level. We actually panned the Indica. And then it was so interesting. Our rivals took the same report and sent it to Mr. Tata saying, what is your people writing? So it doesn't work both ways, But it was good to see all these pyrotechnics happening. The Nano came out and I was there just for one day at a function at ERC. And the Nano was kept under wraps massively. No one could even understand that thing. So I came out and this one small car came out. I hardly saw it for 30-40 seconds. And then they said, no, you must come away. So when we did a big story on the Nano, I think we did a 3 or a 4 page story in Economic Times. and I got one of my guys to do from my vision do the sketch of the thing. The Times of India guys were so shit scared. Say, Adil, I hope you're right. Otherwise, they had just managed to mend fences and all that. I said, okay, no problem. And we ran the story of the day the Nano was going to be unveiled. And it came out. The biggest sigh of relief was from our friends at the Economic Times. But it was, I think that in this century, the most important car design work ever done was by Tata Motors with the Nano. It was a triumph of frugal engineering, of design, of packaging, everything, and for a purpose. And no wonder then that it has pride of place in the Deutsche Museum as amongst one of the most significant cars which moved car design forward. It's a different thing that Tata Motors could not, sell the message going properly. Again, there were teething troubles aplenty. But once they figured it out, but the market in India at that time was way too aspirational. And people didn't want to be seen.
In fact, even Ratan Tata himself said that positioning it as the world's cheapest car was probably not the right thing because nobody wanted to be seen.
But that was in hindsight.
Yes.
So that was in hindsight. So the key thing was there, if they had, I think as engineers, as car guys, they were very happy that they did the car. They didn't put so much impetus on how they would sell it or where. That is one thing. So they were, because all their energies, all their efforts were directed towards making the car, proving a point. That it did not sell in the numbers, which plus, very importantly, the Indian government then didn't support. You have to support Indian enterprise, Indian efforts. They shunned the Tatas every way. Every time the Tatas never lobbied in that sort of way. They never went begging. When Volkswagen and all the other guys came in here, they were given sales tax benefits for all their plants. They could have given the benefit for the Indica plant also, because that was also a new plant built in that premises there. But they never did that thing. Way the government behaved really crudely, and I think both the central government then, Manmohan Singh's government, as well as the Mamata government, they just scared two hoots. Look at Singur and look at West Bengal now. Pathetic. And they did that thing. So I think that we Indians are our own greatest enemies when we have this sort of an approach. Oh, put him down so that the state can You don't do that. You don't do that. And Tata Motors suffered many a time in this way,
Adil, if Singur hadn't happened, that debacle hadn't happened, would the Nano still be with us?
Yeah, in a way, what happened was, Sirish, it lost a year and a half. Plant was 99% complete, ready to roll out, etc. And then a politician for our own selfish needs, scuppered a project which showed India in its best light. And you did everything to destroy that. So, and plus, one other thing from Ratan Tata Singh, which I think the world always knows, and he says, if you put a gun to my head, pull the trigger or remove the gun. I will not budge from my stance. And Mamata and West Bengal have paid a mighty huge price for this. So in that sort of things, it happened, and Gujarat came and set it up at Sanand. So moving everything from there to, it took the logistical nightmare which was there, but they did it. They lost a lot of money, and they lost a lot of time to market. Not many people understand, if it had got going about 16, 18 months prior to that Singur debacle, at that point in time, they could have been. So, lot of people, plus also the competition, Maruti got breathing time to start doing whatever it goes. There's also rumors, very well substantiated rumors about a couple of two-wheeler companies also, doing that. But he didn't budge, and he went ahead with that sort of thing. They used to ridicule Ratan Tata for, he's sunk in so much money. But at the end of the day, whatever you saw, they have always recovered the money. They have got that thing going. They have understood.
They've learned.
Massive. The failure teaches you more than success across over there. So that sort of thing happened. And plus, going forward, they also thought the Nano in its final forms was very good. Automatic transmission, etc., power steering. I had one
boot that opened.
So it was terrific. So in that sort of, I think the Nano came in about 5 years too late. It should have come in 5 years earlier, and it would have been a different ball game altogether.
Like if we had an electric Nano today, that would definitely work.
The key thing is that structurally the car was designed for 4 people with a certain engine and certain weight. So for electrics, again, it would have needed to be redesigned as far so, and the redesign would cost far more than doing a brand new car. So, but I think there is something. Tata Technology showed a small electric car, and that work is going on. And Tata Technology is also one thing which is in that transport group. Tata Technologies, Tata Autocomp, Tata Motors Design, etc. So they are all. One more thing which I forgot to mention amongst the new energy sort of things. How many people know that Tata's created a bus with the Banaras Hindu University running on hydrogen? And that was done almost 10-15 years ago. And they are working on that still further. And now the best use of green hydrogen would be in stuff like commercial vehicles, buses, trains. And they were ahead of the curve from that time, These things, I think not many people, even if they have heard it, don't want to, mention it,
Yeah. Adil, you spoke about the managing directors. Tata Motors for the longest time did not have a managing director. Then the first one they got after that whole hiatus, that period, was Dr. Sumantran?
No, they got 2 executive directors.
Okay.
Dr. Sumantran and Ravikant. And Sumantran came in to look at the technological side of things, the hardware business. And Ravikant came in for all other administrative, government stuff, marketing, distribution, etc. So, still there was, again, like I said, one of the things which I had mentioned there, the bureaucracy within Tata Motors is something which can put the Indian government to shame. So, that still was not cured, and it's still not cured even till today, I think. So, they needed to, at that point in time, when push came to shove, and the need for a managing director really mattered. And at that point in time, Ravikant was given the opportunity. And Sumantran, I think, human being after all, he said, okay. So, and he left the company because he thought he was in the run. Whatever be it, Ravikant did wonderful service to Tata Motors in more ways than one. He was the architect when they got talking with Jaguar Land Rover. He was the guy who started looking at the Tata Devo acquisition. These are some cornerstones where a person is needed to spear. Ratan Tata could not be going everywhere. The backroom work and all that, Ravikant did brilliantly well. Of course, he was ably guided by a lot more people. But those are the then, Ravikant was above board in many aspects. So, in every aspect rather. And I think that served Tata Motors very well. And then he also realized that we needed to move on further. And around that time, they had got one guy to look at things from a cell phone manufacturing company who was the head of marketing there. I forget his name, I just can't get that thing through. It was at the time when the Zest and the Bolt came in. And those were very good upgrades of the basic Indica. And by that time also, the design department of Tata Motors was making its voice heard in the corridor. Say, we need to have more appealing designs. So if you saw the way the Zest was designed, it was different. The Bolt still had every cue of the Indica. The Zest had a new face, a new approach, etc. I think they started getting a taste of success with those two cars. And then when the Tiago and the Tigor, they did that, they needed a refresh in more ways than one. They had new engines there. And then they also said, okay, let's get a proper thing. At that same time, I think the succession as the Tata Group chairman, that thing was also in the pipeline. So Cyrus Mistry came into the picture. And
Adil, we must talk about the whole Cyrus Mistry period. But before that, let's just focus a little bit more on Jaguar Land Rover, because that acquisition really put Tata Motors on the global map, put India on the global map. Nobody thought that would ever happen.
Absolutely.
Let's run through that. How did that happen?
Yeah, the thing is that Ford had this premium vehicle division, Volvo, Jaguar Land Rover, and I think Aston Martin. And they
premier vehicle division.
The premier vehicle division. So they were, in that sort of sense, they could not sell all as one go together, and it didn't make sense. If so, Volvo was hived off, and so was Aston Martin, because totally diverse. Jaguar Land Rover, there were a few suitors. What appealed to Tata Motors was the fact that not just were these two great British brands, but Ford had already invested a lot of money in the next product pipeline.
The next generation Range Rover was ready.
No, so there were about 8-10 products which are already signed off, engineered for production ready.
Money invested.
That Mahindra was also in the fray, but Mahindra only wanted Land Rover. They did not want to sell this piecemeal. You have to buy both. I think in that sort of sense, Ratan Tata took a bold risk and said, we buy both. It was such a critical thing that a company which had said, why did you get into cars? Actually, if Tata Motors had not bought Jaguar Land Rover, Ford would have been history by now. Would have been history.
Or maybe a Chinese brand would have bought them.
Yeah, absolutely. But so this happened, they invested. Again, it came when they bought it. Lehman Brothers happened 2008. It was a dire time. But they went through that storm and came out stronger.
We need to put some perspective to how big a risk was this for Tata Motors in buying JLR.
Just think about it, Sirish, when the Indica project came in. Indica project was, I think, about 1,600 crores. The Tata Jaguar Land Rover was $2.3 billion. I don't know how many zeros and what it convert, but it was way, way bigger. And plus, they were just breaking even with the Indica thing. They had the Nano on the anvil. So there were too many things happening. In that sort of thing, they knew how they could generate. See, one thing I will tell you, one more thing in. The Tatas are known for their, once they give someone the word, they will honor that come what may. An instance comes to mind when I was I did my Mercedes-Benz book. So I had, through the Mercedes-Benz archives, I had seen that Tata's telco needed a influx of money, and they needed something to the tune of about $5 million or something in the mid-70s. And the Indian government refused to give the guarantee. So these guys searched the world across over there, and Deutsche Bank over there were contacted. So the chairman of Deutsche Bank said, okay, just get me a letter from the Tata Motors board. Their word is far more, we'll give the loan. That is what is the strength of the group. And if you see the recent things which happened with Tata Docomo, their whole deal. So they honored it, come what may across over there. So in that sort of sense, that Jaguar Land Rover thing was a big leap of faith. But they knew, again, it was not just an emotional purchase. It's really good for us to buy up the whole British industry and tell them, see, we did it to you,
And this was on the back of Tetley.
Yeah.
They bought Tetley tea.
Tetley was the first. Yeah. And then they had Chorus. Yeah. But you also see Starbucks. Think about that. So many things, so many beverage stuff. They bought so many hotels over. So that's the group. They knew what they were doing. They understood that. And 2.3 billion outlay was beyond the realm of many Indian organizations to even think about, let alone execute, But these guys went ahead and did it. And as I see it, it's been a great thing, but they needed to do a little bit more, which I feel, again, it's got to do with the things beyond the control in their country of origin, Jaguar Land Rover, because the British government also, again, I think they taught us bureaucracy and they outdo themselves over there.
The people at Jaguar Land Rover, they're really fond of Mr. Tata. With the eulogies coming from there, they've always spoken very highly of Sir Tata because he was also knighted.
Not just that, I happened to meet Ratan Tata at places away from normal Indian. He would be there at classic car events and not just look at Jaguars alone. He would delight in an MG. He would delight in a Alfa Romeo. He was that sort of a guy. And he was open to all. He got going with, who could have thought that Palio versus Indica, and then they would both get into bed together to make engines and whatnot on the same assembly line.
He was fast friends with Sergio Marchionne.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, a lot of those things on an intellectual level, he made sense to the powers that be. He was on an equal. Just because he came from India never meant that someone took him, he was an equal. In some cases, he was a little bit higher than them. But he never let that come in the way of his. I saw him speaking with people on the assembly line. That one time I was there in the 90s in Telco and he was there. We had lunch in the same canteen, workers' canteen. He was in that way very, very. There was no class divide with him. There was no class divide. And the Jaguar guys, the Land Rover guys, the Ferrari guys. At 1 year at the Geneva Motor Show, he was there with the launch of the Ferrari with Luca di Montezemolo. And he was there admiring Michael Schumacher's F1 car. Suddenly it made me aware one more thing. How many people know that if it was not for the Tatas, Naren Karthikeyan would not have been in F1?
Yep. You want to dive deep into that?
No, I don't know much, but the thing is that because
he made the money happen for him to get the Jordan seat.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm suggesting, that even when Naren came in, courtesy Dr. Sumantran, and so he said, yes, it's from the country. Understand, at that time, the Jordan was powered by an Mugen engine.
Yes.
He never would, but there was Tata there on the airbox. I think it goes beyond things like that. Yeah, an Indian company helping an Indian get into the sport. I think those things are priceless, They're in a once in a century sort of a move.
And also Tata Motors have always supported, ever since then, they've always supported Naren. When Naren raced in Japan, he ran with TCS branding. No,
not just there. He ran in that even circuit. So what I'm saying is, when Tata Motors, when Tata Group is there with you, it's there for life.
So once they get behind you, they are there behind you.
So, and it was, again, when you started this thing, nation builder. He was, I've seen many, many, many industrialists. Business first, nation second. This guy was nation first always.
We briefly touched upon the Cyrus Mistry period. That was one of the, like a crossmark against his whole career. The one time when he was embroiled in controversy of the not so good variety.
Yeah, maybe it's got to do with he also was a human after all. But I think that fundamentally there was a narrative which was built against Cyrus Mistry by certain people within the group, which led to whatever happened. Cyrus Mistry did wonderfully well for Tata Motors. The present success, whatever you have got, is directly attributable to things put into place by Cyrus Mistry. And he had no compunctions in going. Ratan Tata had no compunctions in. It's a different thing away from the Tata Docomo fiasco. Was one of the key issues which was boiled out that we are Tatas, we cannot take them to court. Even though the Indian judiciary ruled in the Tata's favor, but still so the narrative and what happened, the dynamics within the group there was responsible for that. It was a sad period for the Tata group, not just Tata Motors alone. And both are no longer there with us, so it's no point in us taking sides now or even then, It didn't need to happen, it happened. And we moved on from there.
Now, considering where we are transitioning to, what do you think Ratan Tata would make of this whole transition to EVs? Was he one of the drivers? Tata Motors have had an early advantage in the EV space. They invested in the technology way before anybody else. Was he one of the architects of this transition that we are seeing today?
I don't know, but I can tell you in a different manner. So whatever Tata Motors always, the most time he would spend would be at Tata Motors. And I also know that whatever new things Tata Motors would do, even though he was chairman emeritus and it would always come, people would go to him for his blessings or to find. And he would, so I don't think that the electrification plans of Tata Motors would not have passed by him. For sure. And at the end of the day, he was so grounded in good, he pushed the envelope on so many things. Look at what he did with TCS. He took it where to where. And it is that is the first Indian global entity which ranks right up there, And he knew that there would be a time where computers would drive a lot of things within a car. So maybe, yes, he would have given the electrification program a lot of his time and his blessings as well.
Ratan Tata, with the Indica, with the Nano, he also set up the Indian indigenous automotive industry, the component industry, the whole growth that we've seen today. India is the third largest automotive market in the world. Probably India wouldn't be where it is today without his single-minded drive, vision, what he created with Tata Motors, which in turn then filtered down to the rest of the industry.
No, I'll tell you one more thing. If you care to think, it is only Tatas and Mahindras which are there. No one else would have done this. No Premier would have done this. No Hindustan Motors would have done this because they did not think. Mahindras came up because Tata showed them the way. And today Mahindras run parallelly with Tatas across over there. So which is a fantastic thing for both. But no one else would have done it because everyone was eager to make money and only that. And that was the single most important thing which he took away. He made this business into a people's business and tried to do that. I don't think Premier or Hindustan Motors could ever think like that or ever thought like that as well.
And today the group is in such a state that today we are proud to own a Tata, whether it is a car, whether it is anything else. That pride with the brand, and it's put India also on a world pedestal. Everybody looks at India as this emerging superpower.
There's no two ways about it. I still feel that if the Indian governments of the 80s had been fair and even-handed, our Indian industry would not have only pains to sing about Maruti Udyog because they got the largest, they got a free run, they got umpteen SOPs from the government, customs were waived on so many things that. So what I'm saying, it's great to have Maruti, nothing wrong with. But the way that thing happened for Maruti, the same thing did not happen for many others. I think that lost decade there, from the mid-80s to 2000, or a decade and a half, we lost. India as a country lost. Forget just about thinking about cars. India as a nation, we lost so many things because of this myopic approach of the government of the time,
And today we've lost a great man. A real
no two ways about it.
Your final words on Ratan Tata?
I think he was too good a human being. There were people who would try to pull the wool over his eyes. And even when he knew that they were doing that, many a time he did not come in the way of his civility with them. I think it takes a great man to be able to do that,
A great man. Thank you, Adil, for all your inputs. And thank you for watching and listening. If you have any comments, if you have any memories, if you have any thoughts to share on Ratan Tata, on his life and times, his career, what he's done with cars, and also the entire Indian industry, drop it in the comments. And thank you once again for watching and listening.